There's something crucial nobody discusses, yet every man experiences. The exact moment when your perceived value drops in his eyes, and once it happens, it's nearly impossible to reverse. The frightening reality? Most women don't even recognize it's occurring until the damage is done. Understand this. True value isn't determined by your appearance, career achievements, or how much you sacrifice for him. It stems from the energy you bring into the relationship, how you maintain your personal boundaries, and your response patterns rather than pursuit behaviors. It's that quiet self-assurance that communicates, I choose to be with you, but I don't require your validation to feel complete. When that energy diminishes, even slightly, he senses it at a gut level, almost instinctively. Just like that, the relationship dynamic transforms. He begins creating distance. You start doubting yourself. And what initially showed real promise descends into another emotional turbulence you never wanted to experience. That's why I'm revealing the 4 subtle behaviors that silently diminish your worth in his perception, even when your intentions are genuine. Because embodying high-value energy isn't about playing games or manipulation tactics. It's about mindset and lifestyle choices. Once you recognize what quietly drains your perceived value, you can stop diminishing yourself to accommodate someone else's comfort zone and start embracing your authentic worth. This isn't about creating artificial scarcity. It's about becoming genuinely unforgettable. So if you're tired of feeling misunderstood, undervalued, or consistently putting in more effort, stay with me. The next half hour might fundamentally transform how you show up in relationships forever. Many women have been conditioned to believe that attraction primarily revolves around physical appearance, charm, or perfect timing with words. But the reality runs much deeper. At its foundation, male attraction is fundamentally connected to how a man perceives a woman's inherent value, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, and psychologically. Here's what most relationship advice misses. Men are naturally drawn to women who evoke powerful emotions while simultaneously creating a sense of security. This doesn't mean becoming his emotional caretaker, maternal figure, or constant support system. It means becoming a reflection that shows him a version of himself he's proud to be: confident, protective, inspired. And the only woman who can consistently create this effect is one who knows her authentic self. Masculine energy naturally moves toward pursuing, earning, and accomplishing, but not indiscriminately. It gravitates toward what feels rare and slightly beyond immediate reach, what challenges him, not confrontationally, but in ways that inspire him to elevate himself, improve, and fully engage. That's why women who lead with neediness, excessive availability, or emotional instability quickly become less attractive, regardless of their beauty, achievements, or kindness. The moment a man perceives he doesn't need to invest effort for your attention, something in his primal wiring disengages, not from cruelty or ingratitude, but because desire thrives on effort, uncertainty, and energetic contrast. The true magic emerges from complementary energies. Masculine energy tends to be directive, outward-focused, and action-oriented. Feminine energy often embodies receptivity, inner awareness, and magnetic presence. When a woman fully embraces her feminine essence, her composed presence, intriguing depth, and natural grace, she activates something in a man that transcends logical explanation. He simply feels drawn toward her, almost involuntarily. This pull creates sustainable desire beyond momentary physical attraction. But here's where misunderstandings commonly arise. Many women either try to earn a man's affection by demonstrating their worth, or they swing to the opposite extreme with emotional unavailability to appear less attainable. Neither approach succeeds long-term. The first depletes your energy and makes you easy to overlook. The second constructs barriers so formidable that even someone with genuine intentions can't connect meaningfully. True attraction isn't about strategic manipulation. It's about training your nervous system to stop seeking external validation and instead radiate genuine self-assurance. When you trust yourself completely, you stop trying to convince others of your value. They simply feel it naturally. And men don't fall in love with verbal assurances. They fall in love with how they feel in your presence. When he experiences groundedness, excitement, positive challenge, and emotional ease around you, he begins associating you with those emotional states. That association keeps him thinking about you when you're apart and investing more deeply over time. Of course, not all men are prepared for this type of woman. Some remain caught in immature patterns, pursuing drama, or needing control. You aren't responsible for fixing or reshaping them. Your only responsibility is remaining so deeply connected to your authentic worth that you naturally attract the kind of man who's ready to grow alongside you, not play emotional games. So when we explore the psychology of male attraction, it ultimately comes down to this. He doesn't develop deep feelings for someone who pursues him. He doesn't develop deep feelings for someone who offers everything without discernment. He develops deep feelings for the woman who naturally brings out his best self simply through her authentic presence. And when you become that woman, not through performance, but through alignment, everything begins to transform. Let's examine one of the most common and problematic mistakes women make early in relationships: premature overgiving. It typically begins with positive intentions. You feel connection with him. You want to demonstrate care. You're excited about the potential. So you naturally begin offering generosity in various forms, whether through thoughtful gifts, going out of your way to assist with his challenges, sending consistent morning and evening messages, rearranging your schedule to accommodate him, or emotionally investing before he's demonstrated his character and intentions. You might believe you're simply expressing affection, but what's actually happening? You're investing energy without verifying if he's earned that level of investment. For a woman who values herself appropriately, this creates a fundamental shift in dynamics. You unintentionally position yourself in the masculine energy of pursuit and provision, while he falls into the passive role of receiving without effort. Once this pattern establishes, attraction begins fading, not because you've done something wrong, but because men instinctively value what they earn through effort rather than what's freely offered without discernment. When you give excessively too soon, you're essentially communicating, "Here's everything I have to offer," before you've demonstrated what you're bringing to this relationship. This triggers a subconscious shift in his perception. Suddenly, he no longer feels motivated to pursue you. The element of healthy challenge disappears, the energetic polarity dissolves, and what began with genuine spark transforms into something one-dimensional and imbalanced. No matter how sincere your generosity, if it lacks discernment, it sends an unintended message that your attention comes without conditions, that you're available for emotional support, caregiving, or assistance without being asked. Let's be honest, a man will only invest at the level he believes necessary to win your heart. The unfortunate reality? Many women give prematurely because, deep down, they fear withholding will cause his interest to wane, that if they don't quickly demonstrate their value, he'll move on. Yet this very fear undermines the attraction. Men don't develop deep feelings for women who give the most. They develop feelings for women whose presence feels like a genuine privilege to experience. A woman who gives from abundance rather than insecurity, who knows her worth so thoroughly that her time, energy, and affection are perceived as valuable gifts rather than automatic entitlements. When he's not reciprocating, when he's not showing equivalent interest or investment, your giving doesn't feel generous. It feels unbalanced. It establishes a precedent where you'll carry the emotional weight of the connection while he contributes minimal effort. That's not love. That's self-abandonment disguised as kindness. The truth is, you teach people how to treat you from the very beginning. When you establish a pattern of overgiving from day one, you set the tone that your needs come second, that you'll prove your worth rather than embodying it. Eventually, this leads to resentment, emotional exhaustion, and heartbreak. The alternative approach: remain grounded in your worth. Practice receptivity. Allow him to demonstrate who he truly is through consistent behavior over time. Observe his level of effort. Notice his consistency. Give, but give thoughtfully. Give in response to energy that feels mutual rather than simply potential. Because the woman who gives with discernment isn't cold or withholding, she's wise. She understands that authentic connection should be built through mutual investment, not purchased through desperate overgiving. This approach maintains your perceived value and earns his genuine respect. Let's explore something that quietly erodes your perceived worth in his eyes, something often stemming from deep emotional wounds but manifesting in subtle daily interactions, seeking constant reassurance. It might sound familiar. Do you still have feelings for me? Are you upset with me? Why haven't you responded yet? Is everything okay between us? Are you sure you're still interested? These questions seem innocent on the surface. You're simply trying to understand where you stand, right? But beneath this behavior often lies a deeper need, a desire for security, validation, and confirmation that you're enough. When this need begins driving your actions, it fundamentally shifts the relationship dynamic. Here's the problem. Repeatedly seeking reassurance signals to him that you lack self-trust and confidence in your inherent worth. Once he senses this uncertainty, his perception of you begins changing. The magnetic, high-value energy that initially attracted him starts diminishing. Why? Because constant reassurance seeking stems from emotional insecurity, and that quality rarely sustains attraction long-term. Men naturally gravitate toward women who demonstrate emotional groundedness, who can regulate their internal states, and who don't require continual external validation to feel secure. When you repeatedly ask for reassurance, you're unintentionally communicating, "I don't feel safe within myself. I need you to constantly soothe my anxiety. I need regular reminders that I'm lovable, desirable, and enough." For most men, this creates an overwhelming dynamic, not because they lack compassion, but because it creates pressure. It places them in a parental role rather than an equal partnership. It disrupts the natural polarity between you. Even worse, it trains the relationship to revolve around managing your insecurities rather than deepening your connection. No matter how much reassurance you receive, it's never sufficient because the void exists internally, not externally. This behavior often operates subconsciously. Perhaps previously you experienced ghosting, unexpected rejection, or betrayal. Maybe you were involved with someone emotionally unavailable, creating a fear that silence equals rejection. Perhaps you were told you were too sensitive or too much, causing you to overthink every subtle shift in energy. But without healing these patterns within yourself, you'll bring them into every new relationship, gradually pushing away the very connection you desire. Here's the alternative approach. High-value women don't chase clarity, they embody it. They don't need constant confirmation of where they stand because they know they're standing firmly in their worth. When something feels off, they don't spiral into anxiety or perform for reassurance. They observe, they listen, they provide space. Most importantly, they allow men to engage without feeling emotionally micromanaged or pressured. You can absolutely seek clarity when appropriate. But there's a significant difference between a confident check-in and an insecure spiral. One comes from personal power, the other from fear. If you notice yourself needing frequent reassurance, pause and ask, "What am I truly afraid of here? Can I support myself through this uncertainty without requiring someone else to resolve it for me?" The moment you develop self-soothing capabilities, you stop surrendering your power. You stop allowing anxiety to drive your decisions. That's when men begin feeling naturally drawn to you, not from obligation, but from genuine admiration. Ultimately, it's not about becoming emotionless. It's about developing emotional resilience. And that quality proves magnetic, unshakable, and unforgettable. This insight will resonate deeply for many women because it's something that often feels like love, but gradually transforms into self-abandonment, making a man the central focus of your world. It typically begins innocently enough. You meet someone, feel connection, and suddenly experience excitement, butterflies, anticipation. You want to spend time together, hear from him, arrange your schedule around his availability. That's natural during early attraction. When we're developing feelings, our focus naturally shifts. But here's the danger. When your entire life begins revolving around him, you start losing the very qualities that made you attractive initially: your individuality, independence, and personal energy. The moment a man becomes your primary focus and you begin orbiting around his life, the natural polarity begins deteriorating. Why? Because emotionally healthy men aren't seeking women who lose themselves in relationships. They're drawn to women who remain rooted in their own identity, who maintain passions, goals, routines, and sources of joy that don't depend on his presence. When you cancel plans with friends, abandon personal interests, or constantly rearrange your schedule based on his availability, you're sending a subtle but powerful message. You matter more than I do. While that might feel like devotion to you, what it actually communicates is a lack of boundaries, insufficient self-prioritization, and often diminished self-worth. Men perceive this shift. Even if they can't articulate it precisely, they notice when your world contracts to accommodate them. Ironically, instead of strengthening the connection, it typically creates distance because you're no longer the woman who initially attracted him, the one with her own vibrant life and magnetic energy. You've transformed into someone who's waiting, watching, and adjusting herself around his behavior. That's not partnership, that's emotional dependency. Here's the truth. The most attractive, memorable women are those who recognize their life is already complete. A relationship represents an addition, not a completion. They don't abandon their identity when someone new enters their life. If anything, they become more authentically themselves. They maintain their routines. They continue nurturing friendships. They pursue their goals. They protect their peace. This type of woman doesn't merely capture attention. She earns genuine respect. And without respect, love cannot sustain itself. This isn't about becoming distant or emotionally unavailable. It's about remaining centered in your identity. You can be warm, affectionate, and emotionally available while simultaneously staying anchored in your own sense of self. When you maintain this balance, you're not constantly fearing his loss. You're not reshaping yourself to fit into his world. You're inviting him into yours as an equal partner. That energy is simply irresistible. When a man senses that your emotional well-being doesn't collapse if he doesn't immediately respond, when he recognizes you're not arranging your entire life around his attention, when he observes that your happiness isn't dependent on his mood or validation, he begins feeling fortunate to be part of your life. Not pressured or drained, just genuinely appreciative. But the moment your emotional state rises and falls based on his behavior, you surrender your personal power. You shift from being the chooser to becoming the pursuer. And that represents the fastest way to diminish your perceived value in his eyes, regardless of your positive intentions. So here's the mindset shift. Approach life as the protagonist in your own story. Welcome him as an important character in your narrative, but never the entire storyline. Because a woman who recognizes her inherent completeness naturally attracts the kind of man who respects her, values her uniqueness, and wants to grow alongside her rather than tower above her. This mistake can cost you your confidence, clarity, and often your entire sense of identity within a relationship, disregarding your personal standards and boundaries. Initially, it seems insignificant. You overlook something concerning. You tell yourself, it's not worth addressing. I don't want to seem demanding. You compromise, accommodate, diminish yourself slightly just to maintain harmony or avoid appearing difficult. But here's what's actually happening. Every time you silence your inner wisdom, every time you override your intuition about something that doesn't align with your values simply to preserve a connection, you send a powerful message, first to him, but more critically to yourself. That message states, my needs aren't equally important. My requirements are negotiable. As long as he remains, I'll adapt indefinitely. The truth is, men notice when your standards fluctuate. They might not consciously register every compromise, but they sense the shift. The absence of clear boundaries generates less respect, not greater comfort. Because while a man might appreciate the convenience of a woman who accepts everything without question, he rarely deeply values her. Standards aren't about rigidity or inflexibility. They reflect a clear understanding of what you will and won't accept, what aligns with your values, lifestyle preferences, and emotional well-being. Boundaries, on the other hand, protect your essence. They're not punishments, they're self-respect in action. When you disregard these elements, you ultimately abandon yourself to maintain connection with someone who might not even be meeting basic relationship requirements. This gradually erodes your inner peace. Anxiety increases. Self-doubt grows. You begin wondering, am I expecting too much? When in reality, you're not expecting enough. Many women ignore their boundaries out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of driving someone away, fear that establishing limits will end the relationship. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If someone leaves because you establish a reasonable boundary, they were never meant to remain. Men don't leave because you have standards. High-quality men respect standards. They rise to meet them. Those who don't, you benefit more from their departure than from building a relationship founded on silence, self-sacrifice, and growing resentment. The most magnetic women are those who calmly, clearly, and consistently uphold what they value. They don't resort to yelling. They don't beg. They don't repeatedly justify themselves. They simply communicate what they will and won't accept. And if someone can't meet these requirements, They gracefully exit the situation. No drama, just self-honor. When you maintain strong standards and boundaries, you broadcast a specific signal. I am unavailable for anything less than what I deserve. This energy doesn't repel quality connections. It filters out incompatible ones. It protects your emotional space. It prevents wasting precious time with people incapable of meeting you at your level. The greatest benefit? When you connect with someone who respects these boundaries, the dynamic transforms. You won't need to perform. You won't struggle to be seen and valued. You won't need to accept minimal effort and call it love, because the right partner will view your boundaries not as obstacles, but as gateways, and he'll want to be worthy of walking through them. Stop ignoring your intuition when it signals this doesn't feel right. Stop compromising your standards just to preserve potential. Because when you honor your boundaries, you stop attracting people who test them and start attracting people who respect them. If you've stayed with me to this point, take a deep breath, because this represents the turning point. This is where you stop surrendering your power and begin reclaiming it. Let's be honest, most of us never received proper guidance about valuing ourselves in relationships. We were taught to be agreeable, to be chosen, to be good enough for someone else. Somewhere along the way, we internalized the belief that love must be earned through effort, perfection, or sacrifice. But authentic love, healthy love, never requires self-abandonment. It doesn't demand that you diminish yourself, pursue desperately, prove your worth, or please constantly. It invites you to show up fully, authentically, with both your vulnerability and strength, your standards and your open heart, protected by wisdom. Reclaiming your power isn't about playing games or pretending detachment. It's about embracing your worth unapologetically. It's recognizing that your value doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's treatment of you. It remains constant, deeply rooted, and it begins and ends with how you treat yourself. You don't need to overextend yourself to be loved. You don't require constant reassurance to feel secure. You don't need to make someone the center of your universe to maintain their interest. And you absolutely never need to lower your standards to avoid being alone. You have every right to occupy space, to decline what doesn't serve you, to desire more, to walk away when your peace is compromised. That's not being too much. That's being self-aware. The moment you stop betraying yourself for connection is the moment you become naturally magnetic to authentic love. Here's the truth. High-value women don't chase relationships. They attract them naturally, not through perfection, but through alignment. They do their inner healing work. They address their emotional wounds. They recognize patterns. They refuse to remain caught in cycles that deplete them. They choose themselves consistently until their external reality reflects that internal choice. Reclaiming your power requires daily commitment. It means believing in your worthiness, especially during moments of doubt. It's having the courage to walk away from almost right situations, understanding that almost will never fulfill you. It's maintaining your boundaries even when you fear they might drive someone away, because you trust that the right person will remain and rise to meet you. This path isn't always easy. Sometimes reclaiming your power means sitting with discomfort when you want to send that text. Sometimes it means staying home, nurturing yourself instead of accommodating someone who only reaches out at the last minute. Sometimes it requires grieving the version of yourself who believed love meant giving everything away. But beyond that grief lies freedom. Freedom from chronic self-doubt. Freedom from unhealthy relationship patterns. Freedom from repeating the same story and calling it love. Within that freedom, you begin writing a new narrative, one where you are the protagonist, not a supporting character in someone else's life. One where you don't need external validation to feel valuable because you've already validated yourself. Let this serve as your reminder. You don't need to keep learning these lessons the hard way. You don't need to keep settling, hoping, waiting, or chasing. You have permission to rise, to transform, to establish new standards, not from bitterness, but from personal power. The kind of power that's quiet, steady, and undeniable. You don't need to become someone different to be loved. You simply need to become the version of yourself that stops accepting less than you deserve. And if no one has told you recently, you are worthy. You are enough. And your love is a gift, not a transaction. So here's your invitation, not just for this video, but for your life. Reclaim your power every single day, because the world needs more women who know who they are, what they deserve, and refuse to accept anything less. If you're ready for that kind of transformation, hit the like button, share your thoughts below, and simply write, "I'm choosing." And don't forget to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Your power isn't lost. It's simply been waiting for you to remember who you truly are.